I call legal committee, Smith, Johnson, Mr. Lawson, to discuss group homes located in subdivision Brookline. Who brought that, Mr. Johnson?
Yeah, I'd just like to ask the administration to, I know there's laws, rules, and regulations. One of the biggest concerns that I hear that concerns residents in different areas of the city is that group homes, once they come into respective neighborhoods and community, what we can and cannot do. And I think one of the things that concerns residents in certain areas is that, you know, being informative, you know, do these different agencies just come in and just put them there based on whether they're halfway houses, based on whether they're homes for special needs in general. So I would just like to ask you, Mr. Johnson, what policy procedure, what does the city do, or what legally, you know, is in place to inform those residents of communities, or should there be any at all?
Well, I can just give you some background, Mr. Johnson. As all of y'all know, next to our children, persons with developmental disabilities are the most vulnerable members of our society. And like other groups, they've been able to establish through the courts certain constitutional rights which we must recognize and protect. Now, historically, the litigation as far as constitutional rights started with a case called Gary versus the state of Louisiana. It was back in 1976. That was a class action that was brought on behalf of all institutionalized persons from Louisiana and Texas. And basically what ultimately came from the Supreme Court is that the court said that persons with developmental disabilities should have the chance to live in the, quote, least restrictive environment possible, depending on their degree of disability. Now, in Louisiana, there's been several cases that have been litigated where municipalities tried to use zoning and other means to limit the ability of community homes and group homes to come into certain neighborhoods. The first one was Hayes versus City of Baton Rouge. That's a First Circuit case. In that case, the City of Baton Rouge passed an ordinance that required 51% of the owners and occupants of properties located within a 1,000-foot radius of a proposed facility to sign off. They had to get that amount of signatures before the group home could come in. The court noted that our state statute only allowed community homes of right in areas zoned for multi-family dwellings, meaning apartments and duplexes, if the community home was limited to 6 occupants. The cases generally in this area allow some regulation from municipalities, but we can't use zoning to keep them out. That's the gist of the litigation. Now, I did a table myself using our zoning districts, and I can just summarize them for you. These would be the zoning districts where community homes are allowed by law. The single family 1, single family 2, single family 3, multifamily 1, MF2, MF3, MH, just those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 areas. Our ordinance is kind of similar to the one that was used in the Baton Rouge case. We define a family as one or more persons related by blood or marriage living together and occupying a single housekeeping unit, or a group of not more than 4 single persons living together by joint agreement and occupying a single housekeeping unit on a nonprofit cost-sharing basis. The usual domestic servants residing on the premises shall be considered as part of the family. That's all part of our zoning code. Now, the definition of family, limiting a family to a nuclear family or to 4 unrelated people would, Mr. Johnson, restrict these community homes in single-family zoned areas to 4 unrelated people. Now, of course, they can be situated in multi-family zoned areas of right.
With that said,
and they can have up to 6 people living in each.
okay, yeah, and that was a question, I think, with one of the homes that I was informed by in Councilman Hobbs' district, looking at a number of up to 8. So you're saying it would be a figure up to, based on up to 6?
And MF2.
MF2?
MF2, yes.
So no more than?
Up to 6.
Up to 6.
Yes, sir. I'll be glad to provide all of y'all with a copy of the little table that I did. But I wasn't exactly sure what we were going to discuss today, so I just kind of compiled some historical stuff, and then I got our particular ordinance.
And there's a lot of concerns, I think, out in the public, because you find in communities across the city, especially with the neighborhood groups, the concerns once these group homes move into neighborhoods across the city. And I think there's 3 that's moving into Councilman Hobbs' district, and there's some concerns there from the residents about, when they come into the community, do they inform the city? Do they just come in? The general basic concerns of a community. Do they come in without informing the city? Do they come in from other communities? Does the state provide these homes? These are just basic questions that we get and we hear, and I think for us to inform the community and the public would be good.
Answer that question first.
Okay, I'm finished.
Well, you just asked a question. Did you have an answer?
I didn't understand the question. What was your question?
Okay. Based on group homes, when they apply to come in neighborhoods.
Yeah, let me explain the process.
The process. Explain the process.
Okay. The way that this process works is DHH determines the number of developmentally disabled persons in a parish in a certain geographic area. And based upon that number, they issue a certain number of permits. Now, as long as those group homes and community homes are in compliance with the DHH regulations as far as the number of people that they're required to have supervising them, which is 2 people, and as long as they don't exceed the number of people in the home, 6 or 7 or 12, depending on whether it's community or group, then they're allowed to operate.
Let me say this with you saying that, based on the types of homes, whether it's a halfway house or based on special needs,
None of these are halfway houses that we're talking about
right
now. These are not criminals. These are only people with developmental disabilities.
Correct.
Either mentally handicapped or physically.
Right, correct.
Yes, sir.
Is the city capable of mandating any type of a ordinance governing proliferation in an area?
As long as the zoning does not have a discriminatory effect. Does that make sense to you? We can't use our zoning laws to simply keep them all out. We can't use our zoning laws to keep them all in a certain area of town, or to keep certain areas of towns from not having group homes in their neighborhood.
Let's take Jackson Street. Can they have 20 of them on Jackson, or they say that they cannot have over 8 people? That's what I'm talking about. My understanding is a certain element of reasonableness.
The areas where they would, or where they could be located would be only ones which fall within the zoning districts that we have. SF 123, MF 123, and MHP. Those are the only areas where they could be located. And of course, Jackson Street would be commercial. And so, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm just wondering about, I'm calling it reasonableness, in other words, so they can't take, let's take Madonna. There could be 2, there could be 10, there's a reasonableness, one of the elements in trying to curtail that which he expresses some
I think we could probably limit the numbers, yes, but we couldn't.
Couldn't
keep them
prohibit,
out
but you can.
I'm not sure. The occupants of those homes are subject to the same ordinances and laws that apply to everybody in the city as far as disturbing the peace and such as that. So, there is some type of control, but when we went through this, how many years ago, 3 years ago? 5 years ago, when we went through it, when you looked at all the federal rulings and you have no way to stop it. You just have to monitor it. You have to enforce the laws that exist if there are any violations. Some of these homes, we never have a complaint out of. They're good neighbors. Some of them we have a lot of complaints out of, and it depends on the management and so forth. And the citizenry has to be diligent in their observation of it and turn things in if they go awry. That's the only thing you can do.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think we had one complaint last year. You know, all that when it first, and all the other complaints we had with the
And then, Mr. Johnson, if you would advise me of any specific citizen complaints or any violations that you're aware of, I'll be glad to do some follow-up on it and get back with whoever those citizens.
Yeah, and I'll get with you on some basic information, what you just shared, to provide to those communities and neighborhoods. Thank you.
This has come up in about 3 staff meetings in a row, gentlemen. We were already putting together a big report on it because of citizens coming to us. It's kind of coincidental that it was brought up on the agenda at this meeting. If y'all recall, there was another situation. This came up this year, in fact, by a couple that lived in the Madonna Street area, as Mr. Smith said. In fact, it's my neighborhood. There are 2 group homes in my neighborhood right now. I didn't oppose it in any way, and we talked about it at a meeting when we used to have committee meetings in the other room. You talking about the deinstitutionalization of Pinecrest, and there's going to continue to be this issue. We get some reports of significant numbers of homes that would be opened up. It seems to me that the biggest question is about parking usually. So what happens is you have to have so many feet of parking, right, to make sure that that's there for the employees and so forth. And then they run afoul, Mr. Lawson, of the green space requirements we have for certain zoning. So you have a parking issue that you create a parking lot, diminishes the amount of green space or yard that you're required to have under a zone, and so the city would come in and try to say, well then, if they came and tried to say that, the feds have said we preempt all state laws and all local zoning laws on these issues, and they don't leave a lot of room there. But we are concerned that there are neighborhoods getting hit with 2 and 3 homes. Is there a tie to value decreases in property according to the federal government? No. Are citizens concerned about it nonetheless? Yes. And so we're developing some ways to educate people and deal with it. It's not a problem that's going to go away as long as they're taking these institutions and trying to give these people a regular environment so that they grow up in a neighborhood like anyone else. It's going to happen. We get a lot of, I'm just going to be candid, people worry about medical waste, they worry about all kinds of things. And we're developing some things to do with that, and that's why we have a report prepared at this point. So we'll be able to issue that shortly and give you a lot more information if you want it.
Item number 2. I think that's on you. Is that one still on the agenda? Consider final adoption of orders authorizing mayor and the agreement with the Alexandria Commission.
Ms. Worth?
No children, resolution, that's not done.
She wanted to speak on that.
Yep. I believe this agreement with the mayor's office in the city of Alexandria was for tourism events that the Convention and Visitors Bureau would like to ask the City of Alexandria for financial assistance with. And this agreement would allow the CVB to be what we call a pass-through, instead of the City of Alexandria directly writing a sponsorship check to these different conventions or athletic organizations. They would write that check to the Convention and Visitors Bureau, and we in turn would be a pass-through for tourism-related events. The Convention and Visitors Bureau has an agreement with the Red River Waterway Commission. We do that as well. Red River Waterway Commission for bass tournaments and events that take place on the Red River do not directly write checks to organizations. They use the Convention and Visitors Bureau as a pass-through. That is what this agreement is about, and it allows the Convention and Visitors Bureau to continue to go after larger tourism-related events throughout the year.
Ms. Smith.
I noticed nothing in here about funding, et cetera. How is that handled?
Event by event, right?
It is event by event.
Flow through, we wouldn't have to contract with them. I mean, what, the specific.
I move for approval.
What's your name?
Shanna Worth, and I am with the Convention and Visitors Bureau.
So you said this on large scale activities?
Well, normally the different organizations that come to the CVB and want to take place here in Alexandria, whether it's a convention or whatever type of tourism-related event, they come to the CVB first. We, in turn, have to point them in the direction of the City of Alexandria. Then they have to go into a contracted agreement with the City of Alexandria. This opportunity with this intergovernmental agreement would allow the CVB to work with these organizations and the City of Alexandria not have to contract and write checks to these groups to pay for bid fees or to pay for whatever sponsorship they're asking for tourism events.
It's kind of related, but not related. I was passing through Lafayette today, and of course they have a nice welcoming center, and it's really kind of indigenous to Lafayette if you look at it. I guess what I'm saying, it seems as if the many times I visited over there, you all may be outgrowing your space. Are there any talks, and maybe, where's Sherry's name? Are there any talks going on, and maybe we can synergize our folks that are involved in convention travel and tourism? I see Melinda out there, and I see Clifford, and maybe do something that's going to make more of a statement, because you're kind of hidden over there in the Riverfront Center. I mean, very few people would know it's there.
Well, I know that our Executive Director, Sherry Smith, who's actually at a tour and travel conference right now, attempting to bring in additional business here to Central Louisiana. I know she would be more than happy to sit down and talk about any of those ideas. And our Board of Directors would be thrilled to sit down and have an open discussion about that very subject. So I would ask that you guys get with them and go from there. I think that's a neat idea.
Y'all just come together and just
There
talk
you
about
go.
it.
But I'm kind of picture you all gonna give them money and then they determine who gets rent, how much you rent. That's what you're saying?
So would you want to know the procedure of getting funds? That's what
I'm saying.
Well, let's just take, for instance, the United States Specialty Sports Association. That is an organization that played a World Series baseball tournament here in Central Louisiana, July 7th through the 14th. It was a World Series tournament, and it had an economic impact of over $1 million. The majority of the folks that came into this community to play in this tournament stayed in hotel rooms and ate in restaurants right here in the city of Alexandria. They had a bid fee. This is an organization that is large enough, it requires a bid fee. If we want to be the host home for this tournament, we had to pay them a bid fee to get them to come here. And it was a very small bid fee. So they came to the CVB and they said, this is what our bid fee is, and if you want this tournament, you have to pay it. Well, the CVB turned around and asked the city of Alexandria for this money, and the tournament came and went, and there was some contract discussion between the city of Alexandria and you guys, and who was going to write the check, and it just got very, very confusing. This intergovernmental agreement will stop that. The CVB can go directly to the city of Alexandria and say, look, they need $2,500 for a bid fee to host a World Series tournament that's going to bring in over $1 million economic impact to this community. We think it's a good thing. Do you guys agree? Yes. The city of Alexandria would write that check to the CVB, and we turn around and pass it directly on to this organization, and all would be said and done, and we'd win that bid, and they would play their tournament or have their convention or whatever their tourism event is right here in our community.
Same thing happened with the swag deal, Charles. It causes a problem if we don't have to have to get an existing one in place if people come to us late, because we have a 2-week layover rule. This doesn't change any of the way that y'all already approved money that's allocated. It just allows us to have an existing pass-through so that we're not running it fiscally through the city. But we're able to fiscally account for it through this agreement. And we're required, by the way, by the auditor to have this, and it was one of the issues that's been a continuing problem for Mr. Sasser.
Mr. Lawson, do you have a second on the floor?
Yes, that's
I
what it is.
second, you motion, I second, that we move forward with this.
You having some trepidation? You
Yeah.
lay it over a little while?
That's fine. I'm just wondering, just like you say, SWAC, you got all these other places, you know, and some of these people will help. I'm just wondering when they start determining, when we put the power in their hand to determine who they gonna fund, who they're not gonna fund.
We're not,
That's why I
Mr.
got a
Smith.
problem.
It's going to stay with the council and with the administration to make recommendations to the council. Right now, what we have to do is say, we go through that formula, that's why we came up with that form. And if we determine that because the out-of-town guests who are staying more than one night, let's say you determine out of 1,000 people, 400 guests are staying 2 nights. Well, that's 400 times 2, and then you get a multiplier, and it's either $40 or $140. That's what the state says we consider they'll spend in a day at certain things. Sports tournaments don't always get the 140, conventions do. But if you multiply that out, whatever it equals, that's the economic value to the city, and then you can determine some kind of sales tax from that. So if someone comes and asks for $250 and they're going to create $20,000 in economic development, and Mr. Moeller knows this formula, then that's probably on balance a good thing to do. This does not take away your authority of oversight at all, Mr. Smith. It allows us to avoid what is a continuing problem that I've noticed. Since I've come in, there have been no less than 3 events that have occurred in the city where Mr. Lawson and I, or from an economic development standpoint, are having to deal with things after the fact. And it's not a good habit. We have to have a CEA in place, a cooperative endeavor agreement. But if we're having them in place after the event, it's not something that auditors like very much. But we still have to do it after the fact because we have to have a CEA, so we want to correct it.
I mean, it looks to me like this is what they do.
It is exactly what we've always done. We just don't want to keep, if Shanna comes and says, we got 2 weeks to get this done, it just came up. Just like what happens with, well, not so much with SWAC, they're too big, we know way ahead of time. But other events, they'll say, you got an opportunity to get this ball game, you got a week and a half. Here's where the bids are. We can't get that through council in time, but we can go and find out if we have that in community services, and that's already in the budget, we can go ahead and allocate the money through an agreement like this, let the council know if there's objections, it won't happen. But right now, we can't make that because of the 2-week layover. And that's what this would allow.
Well, I mean, that's fine. That's what I look like the other weekend when you and Ben Rouse and Ben, I booked a convention for $400 each and stars. They, you know, when you come back and run, man, I don't want to come here, you know, and we, you know, we asking for help or something, then it's limited because that's 300 or 400 rooms. That's my own main concern.
And Charles, it won't limit any of your other events that any of you come up with. This is just for events that the CVB already does. A lot of these teams go through them already. It doesn't stop us from doing innumerable other events.
Okay. That's good. All
You
right.
comfortable with it, Ms. Smith?
Oh,
Well, look,
If
we,
I'm not-
listen, if you're not, we can hold off.
No,
We'll
no,
give you
that's
whatever
fine.
time you need.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I mean, you know, we can try it. Okay, you got anything else?
This is an item I asked the President of the Council if we could read by title to introduce tonight, and then you still have time, and this has to do with Arna Bonton. If you would permit, I'll read it by title. This would be an ordinance to authorize the mayor on behalf of the city of Alexandria to enter into a cooperative endeavor agreement with the Arna Bonton Foundation, Inc., doing business as Arna Bonton African American Museum and Cultural Arts Center, and to provide a grant for the fiscal year 2007 through 2008 and other considerations related thereto in exchange for certain deliverables between and among the city, LSUA, and Arna Bonton related to the needy for cultural and educational purposes in an amount consistent with those deliverables in a range of from $50,000 to $75,000. Now, that's all the legalese. Let me explain it for 30 seconds. This is a cooperative endeavor that we're seeking to have. We have it in almost final form. That's why we don't have it attached. If the council doesn't want to permit that tonight, it's fine. I asked Mr. Hobbs if we could read this one by title. And for the audience listening, normally you want to have these things attached. When you read it by title, it gives a general description. We have come up with a list of deliverables that 3 parties in the agreement would have, Mr. Fowler: LSUA, Arna Bonton Museum, and the City of Alexandria, in exchange for a line item that they've been receiving, not necessarily in that big an amount, but close to that they've received through a grant that was through the mayor's office. They made a request again this year. We have increase the amount of deliverables that the city gets. In other words, we're making sure that the taxpayers are getting a proportionate return to what they're paying to make this work. We also required LSUA to join into it with us so that they're involved in it from a cultural and educational standpoint, including but not limited to having LSU and Arna Bonton do an African American Studies program that would be part of the LSUA curriculum that doesn't exist. Well, plenty that exists, but this would be a new thing and could be administered at Arna Bonton. It also includes Jazz on the River, which we think is a wonderful event and want to continue. So that's what it would do if you would allow it. The amount in the line item is up to $75,000. That's just in a line item. It doesn't mean that they're going to get $75,000 this year, but we want to make sure the deliverables equal to $50,000. And that contract monitor is Lisa Harris. And that's what this fact sheet would do. It's signed off by the mayor, the city attorney, the director of finance, and the chief of operations. If you allow us to introduce it.
Okay. Is that an ordinance or resolution?
That's going to be for an ordinance. We'll supplement the record with the actual contract in the next couple of days. Trey Gist and I are finishing up some things, and so you'll have it in the book for the next meeting. But that, what I explained, is what's going to be in the contract.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
So moved.
All right.
Thank you, Trey.
I think about a month or so ago, there was some concern about what the status is of litigation being brought to the attention of the council. And I think Chuck Johnson came up with a suggestion. I don't know if it'd be appropriate, but if you'd make that presentation, I just think that might assuage the water to get this thing on the table so we can take care of things going forward.
Okay, yes, gentlemen. What I suggested to Mr. Silver several weeks ago, so that we don't have miscommunication problems or any more confusion, what I'd like to do is the last Tuesday of the month, or the first Tuesday, or any Tuesday, any day of the month that y'all want to do it once a month, is have either an executive session or a meeting at my office where I would bring the council up to speed on all new lawsuits filed, all settlements, and all new developments in pending cases. Now, I think we could actually do it in my office as a group, since I am your lawyer. I can advise all of you as a group, as long as we don't take action. So, but if you'd like to do it in the form of an executive session where we put it on the agenda, we go in the back and do it, that'll be fine with me. But I don't want any of y'all to ever believe that My door is not open. I don't want you to ever think that you can't come view any file at any time. I'm here every day till 6:30. I'm here on weekends. Any information that's in my office which you would like to see or like explained to you in more detail, I would be happy to do it at any time.
All right, thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Is that a so did you want a motion that we
You know, if you're going to do it, you make that
wanna
offer.
just do it
I would suggest it be
informally?
done and advise us. I think that may be a workable solution to a problem that was a little bit sticky.
Should I coordinate with the chairman of the legal committee to come up with a date or?
If it's more than 3 council members, it have to be on the meeting.
You want to depend on
I think when you get
The
advice from
council,
your attorney.
any council member on their own ought to be able to just schedule an appointment, and that's already the standing.
Well,
It's your
I've gone up,
attorney, you ought to be able to go and talk to him anytime you want. That's what he's saying. That's what we want to do.
I've gone up 3, maybe 4 times, and to discuss different matters that we're concerned with right now. Chuck's been very open about all of his, so has Mr. Gist, as far as helping me with information, so.
The charter already requires that he do that.
I would like to see it offered.
Mr. Smith, and I think Mr. Johnson mentioned this, he can inform the council members. There cannot be deliberation or a decision or a vote taken on a position during any of those meetings, even if it's just 2 of y'all from a particular committee.
I guess I was using the word communication.
Right, he can communicate, if he has to talk, if he would have to reach each one of you individually or all of you as a group. It's just that y'all cannot deliberate or vote without having a public meeting. And that's what Donna's mentioned, is talking about.
Do you think, Mr. Gist, that if more than even what would constitute a quorum of a committee or the whole body wanted to go meet and just ask a question of their attorney and he wanted to inform them of what was going on, do you think that a public meeting is required there?
Not of that, but they can't reach a decision or make a deliberation. And they can't take a vote.
like the
Ready to vote before we go, huh? So we have to vote before we go up there.
that ordinance. I want to make a motion that we adopt an ordinance authorizing the city council to enter into a professional services contract with John W. Scott and a professional service contract with Tony Martin to provide legal service and advice for services to the city council related to Alexandria Own Rule Charter, the Louisiana Open Meetings Law, the legal affairs of the city of Alexandria, and matters before the city council. The litigation or investigation related to or involved with the city of Alexandria, the CLECO lawsuit and its settlement, and other matters including with the compliance with local, state, and federal law. Reports and fact gathering and legal matters pertinent to the city council, its responsibilities and deliberations, and general legal services. I move.
Second.
Okay, move for introduction. All right. Okay, you got anything else coming for the legal? Move that you adjourn.
Take a 5-minute break.